Thanks very much, and thanks also for the invitation to this panel. I'm aware that I have just a few minutes for this intervention because the idea is to have some conversation afterwards. So I'll try to be brief. First, I would like to say just a few words about who we are. GAIA is a worldwide alliance. We comprise more than 800 grassroots groups. It's non-governmental organizations and individuals in over 90 countries. And the ultimate vision that we have is a just toxic-free world without incineration. And we promote zero waste strategies in the places where we work. And in the case of Latin America, we work with around 100 organizations throughout the continent. And of course, one of the key actors that we work with is are the waste pickers movements. So regarding the questions that I received beforehand, before the meeting, I would like to start saying that the collaboration between GAIA and Red Lacre in the case of Latin America has been a very close one for more than 10 years, I would say. We really learned to know and trust each other, and for us in the region, they are key actors in the transition we work for or towards zero waste, as well as in our anti-incineration campaigns. We think that we have sort of evolved together regarding the understanding and multiple angles of zero waste. It has become a concept that they don't understand as a threat anymore, but as an opportunity to build societies that recognize the work they do and build that not on their own, but together with a vibrant movement, basically. What we perceive is that waste pickers movement is politically aligned with the work zero waste organizations do. And although because of the nature of their work, they are more focused on specific matters regarding working conditions, promoting of recycling and legislation ad hoc. Anyway, they see the same threats that the environmental movements see regarding the dynamics and of an economy that is not good for anyone, basically. So from our perspective regarding, as GAIA, regarding zero waste systems in Latin America, we believe that they come together with the recognition of waste pickers. Waste pickers bring a very relevant angle regarding one of the key strategies of zero waste, which is processing recycling materials, right? Giving a second chance to others by recovering stuff, to other materials by recovering stuff for reuse, and also a role in education and outreach activities. In certain places, they also play a role in treating organic waste. And we think that there should be no discussion about the fact that the informal sector is by far the most efficient recycling sector. So we see, and that's why we see the highest recycling rates in countries where the informal sector is particularly strong. And in the case of Latin America, we could mention Brazil as one of those countries. So one characteristic of zero waste systems is that they are people-centered or people-powered. And in this context, the role of waste pickers could be further extended to other activities, including repair, research, public officers, etc. We have, and I can share it with you in the chat afterwards, we have put together recently a document that where we identify the results of recognition of informal recyclers in zero waste systems. So we mentioned there some of them, which are quantifiable savings in waste management and reduced social assistance costs, better environmental outcomes by extending the life of disposal sites and reducing greenhouse gases, a powerful foundation upon which governments can dynamically transition towards a zero waste future, and a greater economy and social justice for an important percentage of the population performing this essential service. And I would like to highlight this last point, which is that informal recyclers are essential to a justice transition towards zero waste, and their expertise and level of organization in different levels presents a foundation upon which governments can build a more equitable and resilient system. That's what we believe as some of the roles that waste pickers have as when being part of zero waste systems and waste management systems in general in our region. There was something else related to how Red Lacre has shaped the agenda of other environmental movements. And I would like to say regarding that they have connected with environmental movements, and those movements have learned about the benefits that come from transitioning to inclusive zero waste systems. So it's been in both directions, right? We work with some key principles that make a lot of sense to environmental movements, and where waste pickers' participation is very important. Regarding privatization, for example, inclusive waste picker systems are more cost effective than incinerations and more cost effective than privatization of waste management, for example. Also, millions are saved in transport and disposal costs, and lifespan of disposal sites are extended. In terms of the climate angle, together with the elements connected to climate justice, waste pickers' work bring reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So that is something that we always mention. And from a social angle, some of what I have said before, what we see today is that in times of emergency, like the one that we are experiencing now, right, in the world, the work of waste pickers often serves as a cushion for extreme poverty. In income from the sale of recyclables helps combat hunger in places out of the government's, even out of the government's reach. So I don't want to extend myself more than that. I suppose there will be some questions afterwards, because there are many other angles that I think are very interesting to talk about. Like, for example, waste trade, which is a whole tremendous phenomenon that we are experiencing today, and that we are already in Latin America starting to suffer. And of course, waste pickers are becoming a very important ally in this fight. And that problem is very related from our perspective with the idea of waste colonialism, that I'm sure that you have heard about that concept. And we have started working on that a lot in the last 2 years, I would say. But I hope that there's going to be some space for discussion after that. So yes, that's from my side, thanks.
Thank you, Magdalena, for your very interesting presentation. So now we will give the floor to María Fernanda Solíz Torres, who is a very engaged scholar. In fact, she defined herself as an activist, and she is Director of Health in the Universidad Andina Simón Bolívar in Ecuador, and she is the National Coordinator of Basura Cero in Ecuador, Zero Waste in Ecuador. Her work has focused on areas such as mining, extractivism, and waste, and now her current line of work is working on a political ecology of waste, focusing on waste as a common or waste as nature. So in that sense, we wanted to ask María Fernanda in terms of contributing to us to know which kind of transition is experimented in Latin America in terms of waste governance. And this could be framed as a risk, could be framed as an opportunity in terms of make this alignment between the ecological transition and the inclusive recycling perspective. And in that sense, how we could frame this proposal of waste as a common, and is what are the implications of that perspective in terms of this transition that you have been working through the last years.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Sebastián and María Jose, for inviting us. Thank you, Magda, for being here with us sharing this panel. First of all, I would like to say that I am coming from Ecuador. That is the country, the first country in the world who recognized nature as a subject and recognize the rights of nature. So that is something very important for us, because that's why we are thinking right now about waste as a common, waste as nature, and we are proposing to demand the accomplish of the rights of nature. Then I would like to apologize for my English. I haven't practiced for a long time, so I hope it's clear enough for you. But I was thinking that most of the time when I expose in Spanish, people say that I speak too fast. Actually, in the last meeting, Magda asked me to slow down. So maybe in English it's going to be better. So I need to speak slow. From Ecuador, we have been working, but not alone, in coordination with different Latin American countries and pretty close with GAIA, with the alliance Magda was telling you about, in different scenarios. The first one that Sebastián already referred is that we think that it was really important to build a concept, a theory, an epistemic of waste. Because if you can check about extractivism, mining, and all issues, you have a lot of scientific and academic production from popular and political ecology. But in waste, it was not the same. Most of the work that you have been reviewing about waste have been proposed from the conservationism or the eco-efficiency paradigm. And it was not enough for us, because we wanted to propose this popular or political ecology of waste. I start from that point because for us, it was really important to understand waste as part of the social metabolism between societies and nature. Waste is maybe the best way to understand a society, the inequalities, the justice or not justice in a country, in a city, in a family. So from that perspective, we started theorizing this political and popular ecologism of waste, introducing some concepts of Marxism and ecofeminisms. So in one of our books, I don't know if maybe you can have access to it, that is Recycling Without Recyclers is Waste, the Return of the Witches. It's a book where when we started to propose this category, waste as a common, and also waste as nature. Since waste is the last process of the social metabolism, it's the last process. The first one is extraction, the second one is production, the third one is consumption, and the last one is to dispose the waste. So even when the first goal for us was to write, to theorize, to propose this epistemic approach, for us it was important to work that with the recycler movement. As Magda already said, we have a long history of coordination and cooperation with them. In Ecuador, it has been even longer, maybe 15 years, but it was not always a love story. At the beginning, we have very different positions and we have a lot of differences, since the recycler movement felt the zero waste proposal was not reflecting their demands and their needs. And they saw like the recyclers were threatened by proposals asking for zero waste models or systems. So it has been a lot of time of working together, living together from our university and Alianza Basura Cero Ecuador, that is the network I represent. We have been working very close. We have been even living in open air dumps, that it's the system that we have mostly in our countries in Latin America. And we have been working together in this building of a theory that is work not just from the academic, but together with the people. So first of all, we needed to understand the demands and the positions from the recycler movement. And they basically have been positioning 4 demands. The first one is the access or the right to territory. And from that perspective, we have been put into the territory for recyclers is basically the city. And I don't know if you have heard about a very interesting position from a researcher that is called Jennifer Wenzel, and she used the analogy of apartheid to propose that recyclers have been put through a global apartheid since they have been the global los expulsados globales, or as Bauman said, humanidad residual. So the first right we have been working through is this, the access, the right to territory, meaning the city, but also the open air dumps. In Ecuador, when you ask me about the governance, the risks, the opportunities of this transition and the scenario we have right now, one of the biggest threats right now is that most of our cities and our countries still have open air dumps, and they have been seen from the states and the private enterprise as a threat that you have to close and finish, and thousands or hundreds of families will be displaced and wouldn't have any more a job, but neither a place to live, because in our countries, the open air dumps are yet spaces of living and working. And they have been put like it's something terrible you have to close. And of course, we need to provide dignity, and we need to transit from the conditions that people is working there. But we have a position that the transition from those spaces to landfills or to solutions where the private enterprise is taking place and closing these opportunities of jobs and livings is not the solution. The second one is the right and the access to the production's means. It's like there is not possibility of recycling just with theory and with good intentions, declaratories, or policies that have no material conditions for them. They need transport, and they need places to put the materials, to classify them. We call them green centers. And they need a series of conditions that the state should provide them, material conditions. The third one, they call it the access to the waste as nature, as a common, but the waste is for the recyclers, not for the private enterprise. That has been one of the most important positions from the recyclers movement. And the fourth one is the payment for the work they do. And this has been really, it has been a really hard fight, because most of the countries haven't had the sensibility or the understanding that they deserve the same payment as the private enterprise is being paid for pretty much a worse service. As Magdalena said, recyclers are having a very important, the work of the recyclers of the waste picker movement is having a very important impact towards not just the climate change mitigation, but also from a very specific situation in our cities and countries, because they avoid for our open air dams to collapse. They avoid the pollution to the air pollution, but also the water pollution through these lixiviados, that are those polluted waters that can infiltrate to the underground water. So from those four demands from the recyclers, we have been starting to position this popular and political ecology of waste. And from there, our struggle has been demanding to the governments and to the private enterprise to understand these demands and to incorporate them on the public policy. So when Sebastian asked me about right now the transition that we are living in Latin America, I think that basically the main point is that we are facing at least 4 threats. The first one is this collapse of our open air dams and the necessity to transit from different systems. But that threat is pretty much, as I see, as Magda proposed, this waste colonialism. I'm going to use an analogy to try to explain my point here. Is pretty much the same than the discussion between artisanal mining and big scale mining. In Ecuador, artisanal mining is forbidden, is criminalized. The state and the private enterprises, these big multinational companies they can punish the people who is making artisanal mining. And the state has seen that the artisanal miners are endangered, that they do not know how to use the chemicals, that they are polluting, that they are dangerous, that they are dirty, and they should disappear. And that the solution is going to be the big scale mining. So our countries, 80% of our countries concede to big multinational mining companies that are not responsible, neither socially, neither ecological, neither environmental. In waste is pretty much the same. Right now, the formal speech is that waste pickers shouldn't be working anymore in open air dumps, and we should be closing open air dumps. And we are in love with landfills. So we propose that we should transfer everything to landfills. But maybe what I'm going to say, it's going to sound weird for you, but I don't think that is the solution. If you compare the impacts from a landfill to an open air dump, right now in the open air dumps, over thousands of families are getting out a lot of organic and inorganic material. So the time of life, the life cycle of these open air systems is a lot longer than a landfill, and has a lot and gives a lot of opportunity of jobs there, and people is living there, and is proposing the open air dump as a communitarian territory that should be respected. But the first threat is that the state is asking to the municipalities to make this transition, and in this transition, thousands of people is going to stay without jobs or a place to live. The second threat is that our landfills, the ones that we already have, are collapsed, and we will be facing a lot of ecological catastrophes with our landfills. As you saw in 2019, Bolivia, La Paz, you had a landfill that collapsed and had one of the biggest disasters in waste in Latin America. The third threat we are facing in this transition is that now waste it has been seen as a commodity. There are just a few crazy people as us proposing waste as a common, but everyone is proposing waste as a commodity. So as waste is a commodity, right now the waste trade is terrible. And as you have seen of the recent research that we have been presenting, Ecuador is the third country in Latin America exporting big amounts of waste from United States. Actually, we are importing as much waste as we produce in 40 cities. 40 cities in Ecuador produce the same amount we are importing from United States in 1 year. So
sorry, María Fernanda. I'm so sorry. Can we keep it like that in order to open space for interventions and debate? Because we have really very little time. Thanks. Sorry.
And it's yeah, and you can speak quite a lot and very quickly as well in English, I have to say. And but it's a lot of food for thought, and a lot that we have discussed during this conference to talk about these post-colonial relationships, the West trade, the transnational waste regimes, and so on. So, and the provocation that Gay Hawkins is talking about as well, with this fetishization, as you used to say, María Fernanda, of the landfills. I think that's a very nice provocation. So, Sebastián, it was your idea that we open the floor, we collect a number of questions first, and then very short questions and very short answers, because we don't have much time. Catherine?
Now, okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this interesting insight, Magdalena and Maria. Thank you very much. Maria, I have a question to you. It's a very concrete question because I have made some researches among Cambodian waste pickers in Phnom Penh, in the capital of Cambodia. And there are lots of problems and struggles over waste and about racism and certain stigmata those waste pickers are facing. And I often was thinking about how one can organize those waste pickers as in a workers' union or anything like that. So there is nothing in Cambodia, actually. There are several NGOs, one or two, who are somehow a little bit facing the problematics and working a bit with waste pickers, but there's actually not really a connection between those waste picker groups at all. So I was just wondering how you organized, or how have you done this in Ecuador? How have you organized these groups or the workers? It's just a very practical question. Thank you.
And Dario?
Okay, I don't know why the audio wasn't. Okay, now just to share that I had a similar experience in Belgrade, looking at the Roma people that were used to collect cardboard and things like that. And when I used to speak with a professor of Belgrade University about the opportunity to save this activity, I was addressed as a racist against these people that were, you know, left in a very bad condition, and this was not an activity that deserved attention. The modernity was the solution. So thank you very much to remember me that I'm not so racist. Thanks.
Okay. And then
yeah.
Jeremy?
Okay, thanks. Just one short question. Thank you for the two brilliant interventions, Magdalena and María Fernanda. Just one question: how do you deal with the end of the recycling chain? Because I think we all agree on the opportunity and the importance to integrate waste pickers, organizations into, you know, municipal schemes and all. But when you start defending recycling versus waste to energy processes, etc., you should also take into account the whole recycling chain, no? And we all know that the final steps of the recycling chain, which are not in the hand of the waste picker generally, but other processors, sometimes, you know, they happen in very disastrous environmental conditions, but not only environmental, but also for the health of the workers who are involved in this, whether it is in China or in Vietnam or whatever. So how do you take that into account, and until which point do you defend the recycling for every material that these capitalist societies generate?
I'm sorry, we have one last question by Susa Gil. She had a question for Magdalena. How does an organization that is for zero waste be anti-incineration when most definition of zero waste certificates and policies accept incineration as a way to divert waste from landfills? How you define zero waste? So, Maria Jose, we can open a space for Magdalena to respond, and then to Maria Fernanda. So Magdalena, if you want to answer now, it's okay.
Sure. Yeah, first I would like to show the book that Fernanda was mentioning. Here it is. It's a beautiful book, and it's available for everyone in the internet. So it's in Spanish, but I would really recommend it. Yeah, in terms of the, well, there were a few things that I wanted to comment. In terms of zero waste, yes, definitely there is a threat there. We see that all the time. We see that the concept is being co-opted in many ways. We hear this concept of zero waste to landfills, which can mean anything, basically. And in our region, when we hear zero waste to landfill, what we are actually hearing is that waste would eventually go to cement kilns to be burned, or to incinerators if they finally are built in our region. And that would mean that waste is not around anymore, and it's not a problem anymore, and it becomes fuel for other processes. So so that would be zero waste. So we, of course, what we defend is a very different concept, where basically the first thing, the main concept is that we try to avoid or reduce the amount of waste that we put in the system. So reduction is the first concept that inspires the idea of zero waste, of the zero waste approach. And then there are all these other approaches and systems that are part of the concept, where we also understand that it is a concept that is a community-based concept. It is a strategy that is not possible if you don't work together with the community, with citizens, for it to become a reality. So for us, it is a much more complex definition, and we also understand that when you talk about zero waste municipalities or zero waste cities, we always understand that it is a transition towards an objective that is very clear, where the idea would be to have a society where there is no waste, but that we understand that it is a process that can't happen from one day to another, but it may take some time, but it will which is a time worth to take, because it is towards an implementation that will bring us a definitive solution to the problem that we are facing. And yeah, there were other questions there, but I think that they were more general. I don't know, Sebastian, if you would like.
Probably we can jump to Maria Fernanda, and then if we have time enough, we came back to you again.
Okay, yes, thank you. I hope I remember all of them. The first one, I would like to emphasize that I don't want to romanticize open air dumps, but I want to denounce that the solution is not just technology, but the solution is not only recycling neither. We know that recycling is just not good enough. But as we position ourselves from this political and popular ecologism, we would never think without the recyclers. We would never write even one word without the recyclers. We strongly believe and practice this participatory action research that has been our more significant epistemology and ethic position to make a link between academy and activism. That's why I always say I'm like a chameleon, because I'm one part like a teacher and a dean, but also I'm an activist, and I have been growing with the recyclers. I have been working with recyclers since I'm 15, and I lived the 5 years of my PhD program in an open air dump, and those were the most beautiful years of my life. And I thought for a long time that it was quite because I was never a recycler. It doesn't matter if I was living there. I was never going to be a recycler. And I thought that was why I loved that 5 years of living there. But when we start writing this book of Recycling Without Recyclers is Waste, The Return of the Witches, I understand that for most of those women, the open air dumps was a communitarian territory. It was everything for them. It was a territory. I don't know if you have read about a critical geography, but from that perspective, we try to understand territories not just as nature, this pristine nature, this Amazons or the mountains without people. We understand territory of these natures with people, these transformed natures with people. So yes, I don't want to romanticize recycling, neither recyclers, neither open air dumps. But what we want to insist is that technology is not the solution. And when we propose, as Magda already said, the zero waste perspectives of transition, we are asking a deep change and a structural change of model. And that starts from extractivism and the way we practice this extractivism in especially the South countries, the ways of production. And right now we are facing a global pandemic that is directly linked to this hyperproductivism and the abuse of agrochemicals and antibiotics and all those chemicals that are invading our production systems. So zero waste proposals is confronting the fact that recycling is not enough, but that we are not going to build any proposal without the recyclers, because those are the legitimate yes, popular actors. So about this racist thing and the comment that two friends were, Catherine and Dario, were mentioning, I didn't have like an answer, but for us, it has been knowing that the political representation of recyclers should be in recyclers, and that we can join them, and that we can be with them, and that we can put all our knowledge and the academic institutions to them. But at the end, for good or for worse, they own their own political representation. And yes, we have received also a lot of critics that how can we be defending a work in those conditions. But I think those criticism comes from people who has never been working, living, growing with them. And I don't know if with that I can answer your questions. The other question, I think it was about zero waste that Magda already answered. I just maybe want to add that this waste to energy for us is not a solution at all, that we are strongly against, because it transforms waste to a commodity. And from those perspectives, it's like this monster in these cartoons that needs more cookies to live. The Cookie Monster, remember? Yes, so co-processing and waste to energy is like a cookie monster. It never has enough. So you need more and more and more and more waste. So co-processing, incinerator, landfills are against the principles of zero waste, that are rejecting, reducing, transitioning from a different model where social and environmental justice principles are in the center, live in the center, no green capitalism. That's why we simply cannot be with this co-processing and other models. Right now in Ecuador, they want to put the first plastic to fuel processing plant. And we are strongly against, because it's going to compete with recyclers. And from that perspective, we will never have a zero waste system. And just to finish, I would like to invite you, since the language is our limitation, maybe it's not a full invitation as it should be, but we have been producing a lot of knowledge together with the recyclers, and most of it is in the GAIA website. So Magda already showed you this book that is one of the ones we love the most, because it has been written with a lot of cities and recyclers in different cities in Latin America. But this one is also one I like very much, and it's the first one we wrote after the COP in Paris, because we felt that it was important to build from the South a political popular ecologism of waste from the countries in the South. So this one, and also this one that we just published about waste trading. Maybe you can have access to them, to all of them in GAIA. So they are in Spanish, that's the problem, but hopefully you can have the time and the interest to check on them.
Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda, Magdalena. I suspect that we could continue talking for many hours, and we are extremely thankful that both of you made a space in your agenda and your activities to show a little bit of this, of the reality of what's happening, the interesting discussions and practices and actions that are happening in Latin America, that very often because of the language neo-colonialism as well, we don't talk to each other, or we don't know a lot of what's happening there. So we are very, very thankful for that. And then we would like to invite you to continue in our discussions. Tomorrow Saturday morning, but still we continue having some interesting panels. And for the rest of you, we will continue in this same Zoom link for the last minutes of the General Assembly. So Maria Fernanda and Magdalena, if you want to stay and listen a little bit of what we have been talking about in 3 different waste fractions, you're very welcome. Otherwise, we're so thankful, and we really hope we can meet in other venues.
Thank you very much, Magdalena, Maria Fernanda. You were awesome.
Thanks very much for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.